We've got plenty place on the sides as well, so you can quickly settle down. All those towards the door, if you could just quickly pick a place so that we can begin the evening. Thank you. All right, that's great. So once again, a very good evening to each and every one of you. I hope you're all comfortably seated and all set for an evening of fun and stirring conversations. I'm Melody Austin, and the Hindu Lit for Life is more than a literature festival. It's a celebration of storytelling in all its forms. For over a decade, it has transcended the boundaries of books, embracing art, music, design, and social commentary. This convergence of diverse voices and perspectives has turned the festival into a vibrant cultural experience where stories come alive in every medium, from the rhythm of a song to the power of a public stage. Driven by the brief belief that literature is a living, breathing entity, the Hindu Lit for Life continues to inspire and ignite the human spirit. Recognizing that stories deserve a wider stage, the Hindu Lit for Life is now expanding beyond Chennai. This journey marks a move towards greater inclusivity and accessibility, taking the festival to Hyderabad and Bengaluru. These Lit for Life dialogues serve as previews of the main festival, sparking engaging discussions on politics, culture, and food. By creating platforms for meaningful dialogue in new cities, we're fostering community connections and offering local audiences a taste of the transformative experience that awaits them. With every city it visits, the Hindu Lit for Life is building a community of readers, thinkers, and dreamers. The intent is to make it a movement to unite communities through the shared love of storytelling. This journey reflects our enduring belief in the power of words to inspire, inform, and transform. By bridging cities and nurturing conversations that matter, the Hindu Lit for Life invites book lovers, art enthusiasts, and curious minds to be part of a growing celebration of ideas, one story at a time. At this point, I'd like to request you all to kindly switch your cell phones to the silent mode so that we have an uninterrupted and seamless flow of the evening. Thank you. We begin with a very special video message from Ms. Nirmala Lakshman, chairperson of the Hindu Group and founder and chair of the Hindu Lit for Life.
Subha Sayankala. Welcome to the Hindu Lit for Life dialogue. We are delighted to be in Bengaluru, India's beautiful garden city, and bring this event as a prelude to our annual literature festival, Lit for Life, to be held in Chennai in January 2025. It's an exciting chapter for us as we build on our relationship with the people of the city, bringing distinguished writers, creative thinkers, and inspiring intellectuals to interact with an engaged audience. Lit for Life is a festival that celebrates ideas through literature, art, and culture. And in the 13 years of existence, we have had several thousands of people attend and enjoy the festival. In our efforts, we reflect some of the most deeply ingrained values of the Hindu, that of credibility, truth, and inclusiveness. I'm very grateful to you all for making the time to come, and I'm sure this dialogue in Bengaluru will be the first of many in the times ahead that will allow the Hindu and Lit for Life to showcase and communicate to an engaged audience some of the best talents in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for setting the tone for today's discussions. I would now like to invite on stage Mr. Suresh Balakrishna, Chief Revenue Officer of the Hindu Group, to kindly deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Melody, for that lovely introduction to the Hindu Lit for Life Festival. Welcome, everybody. A bit of trivia. You're sitting in a brand new auditorium. This auditorium, I believe this is one of the first events being held in this auditorium. Christ University, thank you so much. It's swanky, it's comfortable, and it's very nice. So thank you very much for this lovely auditorium. It's with great pleasure that I invite all of you all to the Hindu Lit for Life 2025. Actually, the Hindu Lit for Life festival has been going on for 11 years, but it's been happening only in Chennai. It's a 3-day festival, it's a 2-day festival depending on the year. During COVID, it was an online festival, but we kept it going right through. And it's for the first time that we are taking the festival out of Chennai. So last Friday, we had a similar half-day session in Hyderabad. This time, we have a half-day session here in Bengaluru. And we are hoping next year that we will be able to take it to more cities. The idea of doing this is to, yes, the rich culture of the city. Bangalore has got so many literature lovers. We want to bring the Hindu Lit Fest closer to you. Also, to give you a teaser and try to get you on a flight or on the Vande Bharat to Chennai on the 18th and 19th of January, because that's when the Lit Fest happens in Chennai. Do come. I promise you a fantastic experience. 2 days of a real festival, more than 55 acclaimed speakers, 42 sessions for young kids, there are sessions for young adults, and it's truly a great festival. Some lovely food stalls. If food is your thing, there's some nice food stalls going. And of course, the legendary filter coffee of the Hindu is also available at the festival. So if not for anything, come for the filter coffee to Chennai. I promise you, it'll be worth it. It's a fantastic 2 days. I'm hoping all of you all will be there. Actually, today we have a fabulous lineup of both speakers and moderators. Our first session we have is called Murder, She Wrote. It's with acclaimed author Anita Nair. So yesterday when I was in my office in Hindu in Bangalore, I said Anita Nair, and I think out of the 40 people sitting in my office, at least 25 hands went up immediately. I've read this book of hers. So obviously very popular, and she writes one of my favorite genres, which is a whodunit genre, and that's what they're going to talk about. She's going to be in conversation with Jayapriya Vasudevan. Thank you, Jayapriya, for doing this for us, and I'm sure it'll be a stimulating conversation. The second session is Sculpting Song into Clay, and will feature ceramic sculptor G. Reghu in conversation with writer and art curator and biographer Ina Puri. Thank you, Reghu and Ina, for doing this for us. The final session, I'm really looking forward to that one, is a session by Balaji. Vittal is going to be the moderator. I just saw a book that he's written outside. It says The Bad Men of Hindi Cinema is the book that he's written. But today he is going to be in conversation with a quintessential good man of Hindi cinema, the simple middle-class struggler. And he's going to be talking to two people today. He's going to be talking to the short kurta-wearing diminutive Ram Prasad and the keychain swirling bell-bottomed Lakshman Prasad. And for me, that movie is ageless. If you talk about comedy in Hindi cinema, two things stand out for me. Jaane Bhi Do Yaro and Golmaal. The two movies that, it gives away my vintage, that's no problem. But the fact of the matter is, these are the two movies that stick with you about one of the greatest comedies in Hindi cinema. And he's going to talk about his life in cinema. I'm sure you saw his book outside. I think it's called Viewfinder, and I believe it's a lovely book. So hopefully a great conversation with Mr. Amol Palekar as well. You heard from our chairperson. She's the curator of the Lit Fest, very passionate about it. All 11 years, she shepherded this festival. And this year, too, the festival promises to be great. Before I close, I would like to thank our partners. Firstly, Christ University. Thank you so much for the auditorium and for being sponsors of the Lit Fest now, second year or third year, I believe, in a row. Blue Star, Uttarakhand Tourism. Yeah, you heard me right. Uttarakhand Tourism is a sponsor of Lit for Life. Obviously, they want you to come and see the beautiful place of Uttarakhand. And our bookstore partner, Crossword. They have partnered with us. You can see the stall is outside. Please encourage authors by buying books. They're all going to sign books for you. Get them signed. Keep them with you. Books stay forever. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Hindu Lit for Life dialogue, and I'm really looking forward to this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Balakrishna. What a fantastic way to start off the evening. Those were some really delicious words from you. Thank you. Of course, yes, it's time right now. We begin with our very first session of the evening, Murder, She Wrote, a discussion on the intricate world of mystery and crime. So please put your hands together and let's together welcome on stage acclaimed author Anita Nair, who will be in conversation with Jayapriya Vasudevan. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. It's lovely to be here and to be in conversation with my very old and dear friend, Anita Nair. So, there wasn't a formal bio, so I thought I'd start with telling you a little bit about her. Anita is the only writer I know who writes across genres. She writes fiction, she writes essays, she writes poetry, she writes short stories, and then her newest foray, which is quite exciting, which is to come into the world of crime. So Inspector Gowda and I go back a long way. I think we've had many conversations about him. So for me, I thought I'd start this afternoon with two little stories, and I promise you they're small. Anita once came to me and she said, "Tell me what crime writers you read. You read so much crime, I don't know where to start." And she looked through our bookshelf and she went away. And I don't know if she read any of it, but one fine day, there was the first Gowda book. There it was. And the second story I have is utterly wonderful because after the first Gowda book was out, we went to a bar to do what Gowda did. We ate snacks, we drank rum, we ate what Anita calls touchings. It was delightful to celebrate that Gowda moment. So I thought that there was no better way to start the afternoon than to talk about this wonderful policeman. So most crime writers will have a detective or different kinds of characters, but Anita centers her stories very much on a policeman. So Anita, tell me a little bit about Gowda.
Good evening, and I'm so glad to be here to talk about Gowda. I'm somebody who loves to talk about Gowda because, this is one character I really didn't plan on creating ever. So, Gowda actually happened to me pretty much like an epiphany. Generally before I start work on a book, I spend quite a lot of time thinking about the character and, kind of building on that character. But with Gowda, he actually emerged in my mind fully formed. So much so that he actually emerged riding a bullet, and then I had this character in my mind, and simultaneously, I had another character who was a transvestite. This was a man, transforming into a woman. Right in the beginning of the book itself, you see that. But when it occurred to me, there were two scenes that happened in my head. One was Gowda, Bore Gowda, riding a bullet. I could just see him in my mind, the thud, thud, thud of the bullet and all of that. And on the other hand, I had this image of this very dark room with just a series of light bulbs around the mirror and a man transforming himself into a woman. So much so the transformation is almost surreal the way it happens. And so I had these two characters, and I was wondering what was I going to do with them, because until then I'd been writing about rural Kerala, or I'd been writing about suburban Chennai, or even, to some extent, small town Chennai, small town Tamil Nadu. So I had these two characters, and I was like, what am I going to do with them? Where am I going to, locate them? Because they didn't fit into either Kerala or Tamil Nadu. And to make things even more complicated, I knew the character's name. I knew he was going to be called Gowda, but I didn't know if he was going to be called Bore Gowda or, Nagaraj Gowda or whatever. But at that point, I just knew him as Gowda. And there he was, this man, and I said, yes, the perfect place to bring these two men together, or these two characters together, would be Bangalore. And with that, I think it became a form in my head of that these are going to be my Bangalore novels, or Bengaluru novels. And this would allow me to explore the city the way I wanted to. And Gowda was going to be this person who was going to help me explore the city. So Gowda, in some sense, was a character who, to me, was also like an epitome of the city too.
You said in our conversation that Gowda carries Bangalore with him. And you also said it's Bangalore and not Bengaluru. That he sort of set in time at that moment. So the stories are set in 2012 and 13, before we had this explosion. So how do you think he reacted to the changing Bangalore landscape? You do talk about it in your new book a little bit.
You're asking how he or I?
How you, maybe.
Okay.
You and therefore him. Both.
Right.
Both.
So I moved to Bangalore in 1989, right? So the first time, I remember when I came to Bangalore, it was the month of March, and there was like a dense mist in the morning. And everybody was wearing slightly, like maybe cardigans and sweaters and so on. And I was coming from Chennai. So for me, this was like coming to Switzerland or something like that. It felt so amazingly cool and wonderful. And the people looked different. They talked different. There were pubs here. And, it was so much more cosmopolitan than the Chennai that I grew up in, or the Chennai I'd lived in until then. So that was a Bangalore that I fell in love with. And then over the years, Bangalore became bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it just exploded. And now Bangalore, I don't know whether you can cover one end of Bangalore to the other in less than about 4 to 5 hours. And not just because of the traffic, but also because of the distances involved. So I think in many ways, for me, the change in Bangalore, or, what it is today, is something that I'm still finding very hard to reconcile with. And so I think in many ways Gowda also captures that, that perplexed feeling that I have when I think about Bangalore now. So I think in many ways I use Gowda to talk about how the city has changed.
I thought I would read the blurb of the new book, and then, I've requested Anita to read a favorite passage that sort of epitomizes Gowda. When elderly Professor Mudgood, a well-known rationalist and fervent critic of right-wing forces in India, is found dead in his home in Bangalore by his daughter, Assistant Commissioner of Police Bore Gowda is quite certain that this is a homicide. Although all evidence points to the murder being politically motivated, the more Gowda delves into the case, the more convinced he is that it isn't an assassination. As he and his team launch a parallel investigation, they stumble upon a secret and murky world where there are no rules or mercy. When Gowda's hand is forced, he takes a calculated risk and infiltrates the sinister domain to bring the truth out into the open. Will he succeed, and at what price? Vivid with detail and taut with suspense, Hot Stage is at once a crackling police procedural and an intense exploration of the squalor and vice that fester in the shadowy lanes of an urban sprawl. So I'd love to hear Anita read a passage that sort of talks about Gowda, and he's in his 50s, he rides a bullet, and he says something wonderful in this new book, which I will hold on to, where he says that crime is vicious, it's awful, and what he needs is, I've got to get your words, not mine. Give me a second. So he says, So he says that he has to be very, very dispassionate and have distance from the crime to be able to solve it. And I thought that was very fascinating. And that's really what Anita and I talked about when we were driving here together. So, your book back.
I'm going to read a little segment that, to those of you who are not acquainted with Gowda, is going to introduce him to you and a bit about the man himself. Gowda rode through the open gates on his 500cc bullet. Ratna looked at him and sighed. No matter what you thought of the man, the bike had a way of imbuing an air of stability and strength to the rider, making it seem that this was a person you could depend on in a crisis. She wondered if she should consider buying a bullet herself. When the bike spluttered to a stop and Gowda took his helmet off, Ratna felt that familiar sense of confusion the man evoked in her. There was so much she liked about him and so much she abhorred him for. Did he live here by himself? Gowda asked by way of greeting. Apparently there is a live-in maid, but she wasn't here when it happened, Ratna said. Gajendra emerged from the clump of trees and Santosh from behind the house. The deceased daughter said that she had unlocked the main door. There seemed to be no indication of foul play. Gajendra began. No, sir, Santosh interrupted. We don't know that yet. The back door was not latched, and there are a few broken flower pots on the side of the house, as if someone ran into them in the dark, possibly while trying to flee. Gowda climbed the 2 steps onto the veranda. On one side hung bamboo blinds, and in the alcove thus created was a wide, sturdy wooden table and an old-fashioned heavy wooden chair. Excuse me. Gowda looked at the title of the books. He hadn't heard of even a single one. He won the Rajotsava award 2 years ago. He's what they call a public intellectual. Gajendra swallowed. What on earth was a public intellectual? I'm going to have to stop because I'm coughing.
Sorry. Do you want a minute? So maybe I'll quickly talk about Gowda and what I got from him as a crime reader. So, like I said, I was fascinated by the character. Anita spends a lot of time building up his persona, his personality, his character. And then the next question I would have for Anita is like, how does he do his research? What does he do to solve the crime? It's so different from many books I've read in the past. You okay?
Apologies for that. I'm just going to continue. Who called to report the death? Gowda asked as he walked into the house, his eyes scanning the room. Old-fashioned wooden sofas and a rug, in the middle of which was the teapot, though everyone called it a coffee table these days. There was a rosewood cabinet running the length of one wall. On it was a TV, several plaques bearing testimony to attendance at conferences and awards won, and piles of paper and books. A few framed photographs stood with an air of uncertainty. The curtains were thick, and the room showed no signs of break-in and entry. On one of the single-seaters sat a woman with her head in her hands. That is the deceased daughter. She called the control room, Ratna said in a hushed voice. Gowda cleared his throat. She looked up, a slightly blousy woman in her 40s perhaps, dressed in a long-sleeved apple green silk kurta and white linen pants, and wearing adequate diamonds to suggest that while she may have several troubles, money wasn't one of them. He had noticed the red Skoda Octavia parked in the porch. On the teapot was a bag like the one Urmila had. She said it was a Louis Vuitton and cost enough to pay for a brand new bullet. The daughter stood up and said in a voice that was flat and tinny, Inspector, I called about my father. Santosh butted in. It's ACP, not Inspector. Gowda waved the correction away with a flick of his hand. "That's fine," he said. "You found him, Mrs.?" he began. "Mrs. Janaki Bukhari," she said. Gowda hid his surprise. One of his colleagues at the BBMP local authority responsible for the city's municipal works had talked about a land-grabbing case, and the accused had mentioned Bukhari builders. But that wasn't all. Urmila had mentioned a fundraiser she had attended in the neighborhood. It had been held by a Mrs. Bukhari at the club in the gated community she resided in. Is this what they called 6 degrees of separation?
Thank you. So staying with Gowda a little bit, I'd love to hear about, the research you did to create this character and his own way of solving a crime. His processes are so fresh and different from many books that one reads.
Yeah, so one of the things that I need to talk about here, and which Jayapriya knows because she was part of that conversation, was that, I had these 2 characters in my head, and I decided I was going to write a crime novel. And then I started working on a crime novel, and the thing is, I never did read crime until I finished the first Gowda book. As a young girl, I'd read my, Agatha Christie and that sort of cozy crime. And it wasn't something that appealed to me because, for one, I have this habit when I read a book, and after the first, let's say, 20 pages, when I get very invested in a character, then I want to know what happens to them. I want to know how the story ends. So even before I get to halfway through the book, I'm reading the last pages to check if the character that I've invested in is someone who survives whatever is happening. And now, as you know, in a crime novel, that is pointless, because thereafter you don't really need to read a crime novel once you know. I mean, the whole process of trying to understand who the villain could be is something that I was depriving myself of. And so I never read crime. So when I started work on this book, I spoke to Jayapriya, and I was saying, "Jayapriya, I'm going to write this crime novel." And she said, "First thing is, don't read anything. Since you haven't read anything until now, don't read anything till you've finished." So I set about creating a crime story without really having any kind of material to fall back on in terms of understanding how this genre itself works. In my mind, I had this idea of this character, I had this other character, and my whole book was about how were these 2 characters going to cross paths and what's going to happen thereafter. And I realized that I knew nothing at all about how the police works in India. All of us have seen, multiple episodes of CSI and all kinds of crime files and so on. But none of that holds good for the Indian police force, especially when when we have differences in the way policing is done state to state. So with Bangalore, I was like, now where do I begin? And so what I did was I, knew somebody who knew somebody, and I managed to, get access to a couple of policemen whom I could speak to and try and understand from them. Now, the thing was, I would go to the police stations to meet these gentlemen, and all of them were in their uniforms. The first thing all of them would do is hand an album to me, and in the album were pictures of multiple policemen chasing after Veerappan. So this was their story that all of them had to tell me, and every police station I went to, they gave me the same fruity, they gave me the same kind of sliced cake, and I was like at my wit's end. How am I going to get any real information? Because all I was getting was sanitized accounts of what they thought I should know. Eventually, I knew somebody who worked in the military police, and I was telling him how frustrating this was, at which point he introduced me to somebody in service then, who for whatever reason was on long leave. And I met this gentleman at Koshi's, and because he was out of uniform and probably on long leave, which I think is a polite way of saying suspension, he then he answered my questions very, very openly, and he held nothing back. I would ask him about, how interrogation methods and all of that. And this gentleman was very, very forthcoming. But a few weeks later, he was back in service, and the man was back in uniform. So this time when I went to meet him at his police station, out came the fruity and out came the cake. And I knew I was going to get the same story from him as well. So at which point I finally then had to start making these random calls, when he wasn't expecting me to call him. So he didn't have time to prepare his answers. And I would get something from there which would help me to take it to the next level. Apart from which, I went and met multiple mid-level policemen, not the senior ones. So they were a little more, after I would talk to them, they would start, talking to me, and at which point something would come out, a nugget of information, which then later I would be able to kind of weave into my story. So with the first book, there was a lot of trying to understand how policing itself happens, because I knew nothing at all. By the time I came to the second book, it was not entirely about discovering how policing happens, but it was trying to understand the different kinds of crime that I wanted to talk about.
The next thing I really wanted to ask was, let's get to a new book, otherwise we'll run out of time. But I want to know about the title, because I read somewhere that it has a very specific meaning. So what does hot stage mean? Maybe I'll hold up the book for the world. So this title has a great story.
Yeah. So hot stage, so one of the things that I decided when I started working on the first book and was the titles. What was the title that I was going to use for the first book? The first book, I knew the title, what I wanted to use. But thereafter, when I realized that I was going to start working on a series, I needed to have a sort of a stylistic device that I could use for every title. And here what I wanted to do was to use forensic terms, but not the standard forensic terms. And again, the forensic terms, it's always going to be a play on it. So for instance, there was cut-like wound, which is basically a medical legal term that is used to suggest the nature of the wound. What is the shape of the wound? The second one was chain of custody, which was about child trafficking, and it was about who has the chain of custody, which is also a very forensic term in the sense of who has control of the evidence. That's what you call it when you say chain of custody. But here it referred to the trafficking itself. But now with the third one, initially the working title I had was burden of proof, which is again a term that is used, but it just didn't work enough for me. It didn't feel strong enough for me. And I discovered that there is a forensic process called the hot stage. So basically what it does is that it looks at the refractional index of glass and identifies that, and thereafter, for instance, if you have an accident and there's a glass shattered there, that glass, the refractive index of that glass, and it's going to be unique. It's never going to be the same as anywhere else. So, it is used to kind of figure out the scene of crime. And so here, the scene of crime is hot stage, and it's also, there is a stage set right at the climax point. So it was a kind of multiple layered titles choice.
So again, in the interest of time, I do think that your book has many, many themes, but I want to bring you back to one thing that, one aspect that you've written with great empathy. That is the two elderly people who emerge in the story. There is the person who dies, and there is Boregowda's father, both of whom you've written as very deep characters, and I really enjoyed reading about them. So tell us a bit more.
I guess, I have very elderly parents, so it helps that, I have like my subjects at hand to observe and study and understand, and what makes the elderly, I mean, all of us are getting towards elderly now, but very elderly behave the way they do. So at that point, I wanted to be able to write about it. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about here was also that, for me, noir is not just about, a crime committed and the crime, resolved or solved, but it also had to be about social commentary. And one of the things that I did want to talk about, though it's the last place you would expect in a crime novel, is to talk about what happens to the elderly. Especially when they're living alone or when they are relying on the goodwill of their children to be there for them and so on. There is a great deal of, I think, adjustment that the person has to go through as well as for the family to go through. And I wanted to talk about that. And this seemed like an ideal plot line for me to work in these two characters. And the contrast are between the two old men, Professor Madgud and Chidananda Gowda. One of them is very, very, independent and resilient and still, breathing fire and brimstone. And the other one has kind of settled into a rut. And he is very happy to be there. And he likes to be seen as this old person, whereas Professor Madgud doesn't want to be seen as an old person. So I wanted to work in this contrast and behavior as well.
So would you like to read a small passage before we open up, or should we open it up straight away? It's 15 minutes. Yes.
So one of the things that I also try and do with Gowda is introduce, my readers to the dark underbelly of Bangalore, which does exist. We have this wonderful swank Bangalore. We also have this quite nefarious dark underbelly to it. And so I'm going to read a small scene which is set in a bar, a kind of sleazy seedy bar. It had been a while since he had met Oblesh, or Obi as everyone, including Gowda, called him. Gowda wasn't too worried. Most serious drinkers seldom varied their routine, and on a cold December night, he was certain Obi would be in the bar with no name. There, he was safe and didn't have to look over his shoulder. Gowda parked his bike near a shop selling flooring tiles. It was only 8:15, but the shutters were down. He knew that his bullet would be safe there. More importantly, no one would notice it. He stuck his hands into his jacket pockets and walked briskly down the road that abutted the tile shop. On one of the tiny lanes that housed a medley of shops was the bar with no name. Obi was holding court when Gowda walked in. The element of surprise, that's everything, he was saying. The attacker expects you to use your fists and knees, but he isn't looking at your mouth, and that's when you send it flying into his face with a spitting motion. This bastard thought he had me. He was taller and bigger, and it was a dark alley, but the others hadn't said a word as Obi revealed how he had ended up slashing his attacker's cheek. He opened his mouth to show them his tongue, where the razor blade was perched, ready to be turned into a weapon. But their attention was no longer on him. Obi turned his head to look at what had distracted his audience. He closed his mouth. Gowda tried not to flinch. He knew Obi lived with a razor blade in his mouth, but he still couldn't reconcile himself to the thought of how the man didn't cut his mouth open. Obi rose to his feet. "Sir, what are you doing here? This isn't your kind of place." Gowda unzipped his jacket and pulled the least stained of the plastic chairs towards the table. He sat on it and said, "That is why I'm here." Obi's coterie melted away into the shadows to other tables. He dragged his red-colored chair to Gowda's table. Gowda raised his eyebrows. "It's my chair. I don't like anyone else sitting in it." Obi waved to the man in the bar cage. On one side of it was a corrugated metal sheet with a door that customers kept leaving through and coming back in. and each time the door closed, there was a hard jangle of metal on metal. "What's there?" Gowda asked, feigning nonchalance. "Just an open place with a toilet. We use it to pee and vomit." Obi grinned. "In the morning, one of the boys will sprinkle sand over the mess and clean it up. But for now, don't even think of going there, sir." A beefy man walked to their table. "Who is this, Obi? Is he troubling you?" Obi threw him a dirty look. "Do I look like I'm being troubled? Fuck off from here, I'm busy." He looked at Gowda. "Sir, what will you drink?" Obi asked. "It's best we order." Gowda pondered his choices. He knew exactly what he would find in holes such as this one. The drinks came to their table with 2 plates heaped with what looked like chicken 65. The almost neon orange color of the meat made Gowda's eyes smart. "Try these. They're delicious," Obi said, gnawing on a drumstick. Gowda held the drink glass in his hand, but didn't drink. Behind him, from beyond the open door to the yard, he could hear retching. The man throwing up seemed intent on flushing his kidneys out through his mouth, Gowda thought, trying to focus on Obi's words. Obi got up to slam the door shut. "Shut the fuck up," he told the hapless drunk. "You were saying?" Gowda prodded Obi before he began telling him about men who couldn't hold their alcohol. Obi nodded and took one more swallow of the brandy as if to calm his nerves. The military turned up there. Gowda looked up startled. The tea seller outside the hospital, Charlie, had referred to someone called military too, except he too had said, like Obi, military, and this military seemed to be omnipresent. "I made it a point to move away, sir. He's a mental fellow," Obi continued. "As in? Who dresses up like a military fellow when you're not in the military? Crew cut, camouflage pants, khaki t-shirt, and boots. He even carries a satchel and wears a steel bangle. But I think he's mental mostly because there's no telling what he will do if he's pissed off," Obi said as his fingers hovered over the plate. "Sir, don't you want the chicken 65? Gowda shook his head. "I just had dinner." "So early. I eat at midnight," Obi said as he tore a piece with his surprisingly shiny white teeth.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita. So we've had this wonderful image of ACP Gowda now, and also I think a Bangalore that a lot of us don't know. Now the world is open for questions. There you go.
Yeah, hello. Good evening to everyone. So my question is regarding that how do you see the advent of AI coming in? Previously, when the AI was not there, humans had to think of stories and write. But currently, if you see, a lot of books can be fed into AI. It might come up with a book which might be personalized to each person. How do you see that?
Much as I appreciate what AI can do and what it can be used for, I somehow don't think that it can actually replace what's going on in my head. I mean, I know that for a fact. I'm very sure about that. And I'm sure every writer who has worked on their craft and worked on their books will admit to as much. Because there is something, I mean, it's like, you can create digital music, but you can't eventually replicate or reproduce what a real musician, live musician does. So I don't think AI is something that I'm ever going to see as a threat to how I write. But yes, it is useful for people who probably need to understand the let's say, the vagaries of how writing happens. So it helps you process your thinking.
Yeah, can you hear me? Right. So thank you for a really good session. I can't wait to start reading the book. I was really intrigued by what Jayapriya mentioned, that you didn't actually read any crime genre or any crime novels or works when you embarked on writing your own book. very, very brave and very counterintuitive. But once you did that, and once you have a couple of books now under your belt, when you read probably other crime writers in India, do you see that your style resembles someone else, or you feel that you've sort of created your own style of writing crime novels? How is it? How's that discovery been?
So I think in many ways, see, because I thought of myself as a literary fiction writer. So I really didn't have any, let's say, an understanding of how a crime novel even has to be plotted. Back of my mind, I knew, yes, there is a crime, and the book is going to be about how the crime is, solved, or how does this inspector find the murderer, and so on. What does he do to get to that point, to the destination, the end of the book? So what I did was I just used everything that I use when I write literary fiction in the way I crafted the book. More importantly, the way I structured the book. But then I also realized that the writing itself can be very different, because literary fiction tends to kind of inhabit the minds of the characters. The external world has an effect, but it's not all that much of an impact as say in a noir or in commercial fiction. So I had to kind of remember, the only thing I had to remember was that. And as I started writing, and the more I was researching, it made me understand that one thing that I had been unable to do until then as a writer of literary fiction was to be able to make social commentary. To be able to make social commentary about the world that the characters inhabit and why they become the characters that they are. So for me, Noir was this great platform to do social commentary. And so I am really not sure, because I read some crime. I still don't read all the crime that I should be reading. I still read I read some crime. But I think I've kind of found it. So I always now, when I refer to my crime fiction, I call it literary noir. Because it is a police procedural, which is like, like pure commercial fiction, but it's not written like that. And now the only person that I actually did read before and I wouldn't call him a crime writer, but more in terms of espionage, was John le Carre. And one of the things that I love about John le Carre is the way he writes. So I wanted to ensure that even if I wrote crime, that I wrote it like I would write literary fiction.
I think there's a question here.
Good evening, ma'am.
Where I can't see you. Yes, thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for your time. You mentioned that you weren't particularly a great fan of the detective fiction genre. You also mentioned reading Agatha Christie and not finding it all that appealing. But as someone who has grown up reading detective fiction and crime thrillers, be it children's detective fiction like Caroline Keene's Nancy Drew, or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, or Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple, or even Edgar Allan Poe's Auguste Dupin, they've opened up a lot of new and nuanced facets of the genre to the readers, and we're familiar with the stereotypes that come with detective fiction and crime fiction. So as someone who has probably not read extensively in the genre, how would you personally navigate this genre and not fall into the traps of writing into stereotypes or cliches? So how would you avoid that as a writer?
So it's like, you see, when I'm writing literary fiction, again, we are writing about, people that, who, in my case, I'm writing about people who live in Kerala or Tamil Nadu or Karnataka. And it's very easy to, again, fall into a stereotype depiction of these characters. So there is always a way that I've found to be able to make my characters individual and unique without you draw on stereotypes, you draw on tropes, you use them to build a character, but you don't turn a trope into a character or a character into a trope. So it's the same thing here as well with Gowda. I've seen plenty of movies and, like I said, I used to watch CSI and stuff like that. And I would always wonder at this, the senior cop who's always so much in control. And I wanted somebody who was messy. So I just went the other way around and, turned him into somebody who's smart, who's very intuitive and all of that. But he's also, a man who has a drinking problem. Simply because he's lonely, he hates what he's doing now. The job that he went into because he loved, he doesn't love it anymore as much because he's been battered by the system. But somewhere within him, there is this kind of like desire to do what he wanted to do right from the beginning. So I was clinging on to that, and that became the, let's say, the germ of an idea for me to build a character like Gowda.
I think we have time for one last question.
Hi, Anita. I wanted to ask you about your creative process. Can you say a little bit about, did you have the whole story in mind? Did it evolve along the way? And in terms of, the length of the novel and all of that, like a little bit about your creative process.
Creative process is that, especially when you're writing a crime novel, you need to have some sense of what is the crime that you're writing about. Because only then can you research about it and, find all the little details, those nuances that is going to bring life into the storytelling itself. So for me, I work almost parallelly. I'm doing my research, I'm doing my structure and all of that. And then there comes a point halfway through, which I'm not saying my research is complete or even the structural process is complete in my head, but I'm ready to start writing because I'm confident at that point that I understand my character. And because of that, I can build on the story. And as I'm working, I'm researching and, also making little notes all the time so that eventually and for me, I think the best thing that works for me is that I write longhand. So since I write longhand, I need to think before I actually write because I don't have the luxury of, cut and paste and all those things. I can't do that. So I think carefully before I write. And so it's only when it's fairly clear in my head do I actually put pen to paper.
I think, could I take one more? Yeah? Okay, one last question.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully, yes. Thank you.
Somebody who had a question that side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, ma'am. There's some writers thriller writers, who say that I put everyone into trouble. I don't know how I'm going to resolve it. And then I follow a process and come to an ending. Like in crime, you could say the murderer committed a perfect crime. There were no clues, there are no doors, there's no way you could guess. Do you follow that path, or you already have the ending in mind and you know how it's going to go?
Well, I think for me, the first thing is to identify what is going to be the nature of the crime. The moment I identify that, then I know to some extent what I'm going to do with that story. But it's not, when I start writing, I'm not certain about how the book is going to end and what's going to happen during the process, the course of the story. But the nature of the crime is something that I adhere to quite, because usually, again, the way I've been trying to, write these Gowda novels is to take on something that we don't want to talk about so much, even in, in literary fiction, and bring that in the writing. So it is very thematic. It's very theme-based, and Gowda is always someone who has to figure it out. So that is all I know.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Anita will be outside signing books. Please buy her lovely novel. Thank you for being here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together and give them a big, big round of applause. Come on, you can do better than that. Yes.
Thank
what
you so
an
much.
Absolute fantastic start to the evening. Requesting you all both to kindly remain on stage, please. I'd like to invite Bhagashri, the resident editor, the Hindu Karnataka, to present our speakers with mementos. Once again, thank you to Bhagashri for presenting the mementos to our absolutely wonderful authors, Anita, Nair, and of course, moderator Jayapriya Vasudevan. Just remind you not to worry. Our authors are going to be around after we complete our sessions at the book signing area. So you can meet with them, you can get your book signed. So don't worry, everyone's going to get a chance to meet with your favorite author. We now explore the intersection of art and creativity in sculpting song into clay. And this session features the celebrated sculptor, G. Reghu, in conversation with the renowned art critic and curator, Ina Puri. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Ina Puri, and of course, G. Reghu onto the stage.
So thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you, Hindu Lit for Life. Thank you very much, Rachna Singh, for inviting us. Thank you, Kritika, Akash, the entire team who've made us stay so comfortable, for your gracious hospitality. Thank you so very much. So, Reghuji, do you know that I first saw your work in Calcutta many years ago?
Yeah.
That is when you were showing with Naveen Kishore at Seagull. You were showing in Seagull.
Yeah.
But
now,
since
now,
then, you're
yeah,
now
he was one of the traveling show arranged. Last month was the last. Cochin,
Yes.
Cochin is the last show.
Show that you
Yeah.
did. But you know what I was going to say is that since then, I have met your characters, the last one being the solo show that you did in Hyderabad, it's always like I see a new set of characters. There are people who are funny, there are people who are melancholic, sad. You have all these characters, you know, playing with different emotions. And I don't know how you manage to do that, you know, because the way you create those people is quite fascinating. So I just thought I'll begin with a very brief introduction for people who haven't really known that much about your early years. So Reghu was born in 1959 in Kilimanur, Kerala. He studied sculpture at the College of Fine Arts in Trivandrum. Though he began with stone as a medium, his sensibility gained direction after interacting with Elizabeth and Laurie Baker. Their Gandhian philosophy of working with indigenous materials influenced him greatly. He shunned expensive materials like marble or bronze in favor of humble terracotta. So first you begin with stone, and then you move to terracotta. So tell us a bit about those early years. Also another question. I come from Bengal, and it was wonderful because students from the time they are young are encouraged to take up art, music, cinema. But it's not the case in many other places. How was it for you? Did your parents encourage you to become an artist?
No, I was so sorry. I can speak to Hindi.
You can speak Hindi and
yeah,
English.
That is comfort. Yeah.
Please, go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, मेरा फैमिली में कोई आर्टिस्ट नहीं था. I am only for the artist. Now some young my sisters and brothers daughter.
That has changed.
Yeah, a little bit changed now. क्योंकि हमने फाइनेंस में आ गया था उसी वक्त तो कोई ऐसा मेरा फैमिली में आर्टिस्ट नहीं था. एक्चुअली मेरा फैमिली में आर्टिस्ट नहीं था. उसका एक तो है लॉरी बेकर फैमिली, especially for Elizabeth Baker. Elizabeth Baker was the leprosy hospital doctor that time. मेरा घर उसका पास था. Actually, that Kilimanur is the Raja Ravarma's born place.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
हाँ, इसलिए वो मुझे मिसेस बेकर ऐसा काफ़ी सपोर्ट किया था ये फाइनेंस में आने के लिए. कटिंग पीस ऑफ पेपर एंड पेंसिल्स ये सब मुझे लेके देता था, क्योंकि बेकर यूज़ करने का कुछ वेस्ट पीसेस होता था ये सब. उससे मैं ड्राइंग करके बाद में उसको देता था. जो भी हुआ ऐसा हो के मेरा चाइल्डहुड लाइफ पूरा उन्हीं लोगों का साथ मेरा अटैचमेंट था. मेरा एजुकेशन का जो भी हो वो सपोर्ट उन्हीं लोगों ने किया है.
And their Gandhian philosophy that you followed, you were saying?
Yeah, I think.
That has influenced you? The fact that you moved your medium.
Yeah.
And then you came to Bharat Bhavan. You met Swaminathan.
Yeah. In 87, my course completed in Thiruvananthapuram Finance College. So then after, उसके बाद मैं भारत भवन गया था. एक्चुअली उसका बाद नहीं है, एक्चुअली इस बीच में एक भारत भवन एक स्टूडेंट्स कैंप ऑर्गेनाइज किया था. उसी वक्त स्वामीनाथन वाज द डायरेक्टर फॉर द रूपंगर भारत भवन. सो ही इनवाइट यू कैन कम टू वर्क भारत भवन. इसलिए मैंने भारत भवन गया था. अबाउट 18 years I worked there.
In Bharat Bhavan?
Yeah, Bharat Bhavan.
Where the studios were being
Actually
set
there
up.
is 2 studios. One is graphic and other one is ceramic.
But tell me now, Mr. Reghu, when it comes to your work, in fact, if we could have those images that we've got of Mr. Reghu's works, if we could just screen them, please. So, wo kaise hua? You said that you were influenced by the people around Kerala.
Yeah.
So, that was the first influence. You saw them, and these are indigenous people that you saw. And then you use their, their bodies, their faces, because of the lips, the ears. It's very, very strongly, kind of identified with the kind of people you saw perhaps in Kerala. Am I right?
Yeah. Actually, उसका वो आप कोई भी सीनियर आर्टिस्ट का मैंने कोई भी देख लीजिए, हर आर्टिस्ट को that is important. हर आर्टिस्ट को अपना एक आइडेंटिफिकेशन, वो that is the practice. वो प्रैक्टिस का वजह से सपोज आप हुसैन साहब का पेंटिंग देख लीजिए, रसा या गायतोंडा या किसी का भी ऐसा चित्र हो या स्कल्पचर हो, आप देख लीजिए, एक आइडेंटिफिकेशन होता है. वो देखने के बाद उसका नीचे उसका नाम नहीं लिखोगे भी पब्लिक को पता चलता है.
But वैसे हुआ है, when people look at your works, immediately we know it's Reghu who's made those works.
वो ऐसा ही होता है, वो प्रैक्टिस करके ऐसा ही होता है. एंड सेकंड थिंग, एक्चुअली मेरा बोर्न ऐसा है क्लिमानूर, वन ऑफ द पक्का विलेज, वो वहाँ पैदा हुआ है. इसलिए मैंने वो ऐसा मेरा थीम पूरा विलेजेस का होता है, especially rural village. For example, वायनाड, बस्तर, this type of village. वहाँ का जो भी हो monuments लेके मैं काम करता था. अभी भी उसका टच तो होता है, अभी वो उसको हम छोड़ नहीं सकता है, automatically वो आता है.
That is what makes your work unique, because we have now very successful sculptors like Ravinder Reddy, for instance. He's known for a certain kind of work. A lot of that gilded gold imagery that he has. Himmat Shah, of course, is iconic in the work that he does as a sculptor. In Bengal, we've had so many brilliant sculptors in Bengal. Ram Kinkar. You like Ram Kinkar?
He's one of the
gurus.
Just like Guru.
Yes.
I was Shantiyadan also in 88 sometime.
Yes.
Yeah.
But tell me something. When you came from Kerala and then you moved to Bhopal, after that, how is it? Did the galleries discover you? How did they see you? How did they meet you? How is it that today your work is international? People collect your work. Your work has made its, they're in international collections. Wo kaise hua? Was it Calcutta first, Seagull?
No. Actually, my first show was in Jahangir Art Gallery.
Jahangir in Bombay.
Yeah, 1988. That was the first show. And the second show, I think 89 Gallery Amol, K.Q. Gandhi was sponsored.
Oh.
Yeah, that time, K.Q. Gandhi.
Yes.
So then after, I think, Art Heritage, Al-Qazi, Ibrahim Al-Qazi. Yeah, this type of galleries.
These are very,
very important
galleries and very important names.
Yeah.
So, given that platform, Reghuji, I think you have to hold the mic closer to you.
Yeah.
So you have, these are the greatest names in the Indian art world that Al-Qazi ji saw your work and several others, and then you had Swamiji's backing after that. But today you're working between Bhopal and Bangalore. Reghuji, you have to speak into the mic.
Yeah, actually, I have 2 studios. One studio is in Bhopal. और भोपाल का स्टोरी आपको पता होगा, वो 93-94 में ऐसा पॉलिटिकली ऐसा इंटरफेयर होके वो डल हुआ है, अभी तो टोटली डल है. हाँ, जो भी हो उसी वक्त हम कुछ सीनियर आर्टिस्ट, सीनियर मीन्स दैट टाइम हम 8-10-15 साल से उधर काम कर रहा था, पर पॉलिटिकल चेंज होने की वजह से हम लोग फ्रीलांस आर्टिस्ट था, हम लोगों को थोड़ा कुछ दिक्कत हो रहा था. सो ऐसे धीरे धीरे सब आर्टिस्ट लोग ऐसे छोड़ के गया है भारत भवन. उसी वक्त हम भी गया है, पर नियर भारत भवन कुछ लैंड परचेज करके. सो देन आई मेड माय ओन स्टूडियो इन भोपाल.
Tell me something, Reghuji. This is not, just because we are having a conversation. कभी लगता है that you get interference, whether it's from a gallery or whether it's from higher authorities कि ऐसे करके काम करना है, वो कभी आप फेस करते हैं?
नहीं, ऐसा बिल्कुल आर्टिस्ट करना नहीं चाहिए. आपकी गैलरी को डिपेंड करके कर नहीं सकता है. दैट इज नॉट एन आर्ट. या आई एम मेकिंग माय ओन. मुझे लगता है सिर्फ मेरा नहीं है, जो भी आर्टिस्ट हो वो मैंने उसका इंडिविजुअल अपना एक विजन होता है, अपना लुक होता है, अपना थिंकिंग होता है, उसी हिसाब से ही काम करना पड़ता है. That is true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But Reghuji, just tell me something. When it comes to your figuration, how do you decide कि इसका चेहरा ऐसा होगा? जब अभी मैं हैदराबाद में आपका एग्जीबिशन देखा, वो ऊपर में कोई बैठा था. In fact, I have a photograph of myself with a figure on the ground, on the floor, and it's a life-size figure.
Yeah.
और बीच में गाय है, बीच में और भी सब लोग हैं, and it's a fascinating. It's like a little village, full of characters.
Yeah.
So how do you?
Actually, वही है मेरा वो life monument आता है मेरा लंबा पूरा. Life monuments means in village monument होता है. उसमें इंसान होता है, पशु, पक्षी, कुत्ता, बिल्ली, कौआ, इतने सारा चिड़िया, ये सब एक दूसरों से ऐसा एक रिलेशन होता है. एक चेन होता है. एक नहीं, एक दूसरों से ऐसा ही मैंने वो क्या बोलता है कि रिलेशन होना है, तभी सर्कल कंप्लीट होता है. अदरवाइज वो सर्कल कंप्लीट नहीं होता है. वो लाइफ किसी का भी लाइफ पूरा नहीं होता है. That is important.
That is what you think. But as you're going along, are those characters also changing? Are they dressing differently? Have they become more modern?
Yeah, character always changing. Actually, I have मेरा बहुत सारा सब्जेक्ट ऐसा ही होता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैं 3-4 सब्जेक्ट बोल रहा है. योगा का ऊपर बहुत सारा काम किया है. आपने देखा होगा. योगा का ऊपर किया है, प्रेग्नेंट वुमेन का ऊपर किया है, मदर एंड चाइल्ड बोल के ऐसा बहुत सारा सब्जेक्ट है. योगा फॉर एग्जाम्पल बहुत सारा डिफरेंट, सूर्य नमस्कार, मैंने ऐसा बहुत सारा योगा का different action.
But is it difficult to work with the medium? Terracotta is not an easy medium. जैसे आप ceramics भी करते हैं.
नहीं, actually.
How do you use the medium?
Yeah, actually sculpture में सबसे easy medium है clay. Clay, terracotta हो, ceramic हो, वो basic mediums का sculptor के लिए basic medium पूछोगे तो that is clay. क्योंकि उसमें आपको कुछ भी करना होगा तो एक्चुअली मुझे अभी क्ले को छोड़ नहीं सकता है, क्योंकि क्ले में मेरा प्ले है. अभी भी मैं बच्चा जैसा ऐसा क्ले के साथ प्ले करता है, तभी मुझे कुछ मिलता है. इसलिए क्ले इज वन ऑफ द बेस्ट मीडियम, वन ऑफ द इम्पोर्टेंट मीडियम है एक स्कल्पटर के लिए.
And when you're exhibiting, I know that you have been participating in triennales and important exhibitions, group shows.
Yeah.
Major museum exhibitions.
Yeah.
So how do you see your work alongside the others? I have named already some sculptors, also ceramic artists. Today ceramics, they have their own triennale and it's become a very important medium.
Yeah.
So how do you see your work alongside, the other
एक्चुअली
कैसे लगता है?
एक्चुअली उसका मुझे और भी पीछे जाना है. एक्चुअली सिरामिक में 88 में भारत भवन जाने, मेरा स्कल्पचर मैंने बताया वो स्कल्पचर मेरा सब्जेक्ट स्कल्पचर था, पर भारत भवन जाने के बाद मैंने सिरामिक में काम करना शुरू किया है. उसी वक्त एक्चुअली ये हिंदुस्तान में ये एक पोट्री का बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस था. कुछ मास्टर्स था, पोटर्स मास्टर्स. अभी उसमें से काफी लोग है नहीं है.
ईरा चौधरी अभी भी है.
ईरा चौधरी अभी भी है.
अभी ईरा चौधरी अभी भी है. शी इज अ सीनियर पोटर.
सपोज गुरुचरण सिंह, ब्लू पोट्री फ्रॉम दिल्ली. वो भी पोटर था. उसका अलावा निर्मला पटवर्धन फ्रॉम मुंबई, वो भी अभी है नहीं, वो भी पोटर बना. उसके बाद लास्ट अपना ये डेबरा, ऐसा बहुत सारे हैं. बहुत सारा. ज्योत्सना बहन, 2 साल पहले एमएस यूनिवर्सिटी का एक अच्छा, वो उसका डेथ होने का 2 महीना पहले उत्तरायण बड़ौदा, आपने सुना होगा.
बिल्कुल, आई हैव वर्कड विद देम.
उधर एक काम किया है.
राकेश अग्रवाल.
वो 2 महीना पहले भी हम एक काम के लिए एक साथ वर्क किया था ज्योत्सना बहन के साथ. ऐसा बहुत सारा पोर्टर्स था. एनीवे 88 में फिर P. Doros था that time. P. Doros was the in charge for Bharat Bhavan that time. Ceramic department. फिर उसी वक्त ऐसे ये पोट्री का पूरा इन्फ्लुएंस चल रहा था. तब मैंने जाके वो पहले बार ऐसा हाथ से काम करने का कुछ कोशिश किया था, शुरू किया था, हैंडवर्क सिरामिक में. तब ये एक्चुअली ये पोट्री का पूरा वो चल रहा था हिंदुस्तान में. मुझे पता नहीं है, मुझे ऐसा वो व्हील में बैठ के कुछ करने का मन नहीं लग रहा था. तब मैंने बैठ के ऐसा कुछ स्कल्पचर बना के, मेरा एक किलन स्कल्पचर पूरा बर्न होके बाहर आ गया. फिर फर्स्ट टाइम स्वामीनाथन मेरा वो काम देखने के लिए, अभी भी मुझे याद है, वो आ गया. उन्होंने रूपंकर का कलेक्शन के लिए कुछ काम भी लिया था. इसलिए वहाँ से हमने वो हैंडवर्क सिरामिक का, एक्चुअली सिरामिक बोलोगे तो लोगों का दिमाग में पहले, अभी थोड़ा कुछ चेंज हुआ है, दिमाग में आता था पोट्री मीडियम. Ceramic is only pottery medium. Now little bit change. Now I think about 80% people are working in handwork, ceramic. ऐसा change तो हुआ है, क्योंकि उसमें डिफरेंट आप पूछोगे तो क्या है. ये हैंडवर्क एंड व्हील पोट्री में एक्चुअली बहुत डिफरेंट है. ये व्हील पोट्री करने में लिमिटेशंस होता है डिजाइन का. आपको बहुत सारा डिजाइन नहीं मिलता है. व्हील में एक कुछ पर्टिकुलर डिजाइन मिलता है, कुछ शेप मिलता है. उससे अधिक उसका बाहर उसका शेप नहीं मिलता है. पर हैंडवर्क करोगे तो ऐसा नहीं है. आपका दिमाग में जो डिजाइन आता है, so then you can create that design.
Except that your work is not design oriented. It's not looking at a pretty picture or a prettification in any way. They are very, very unique and very original in their figuration. और अभी आप शायद दिल्ली में एग्जीबिशन करने वाले हैं.
या दिल्ली में वो शायद तो शो करने का है. फिर दूसरी एक बात, मेरा एक्चुअली प्रोसेस का बारे में मैं बोल देंगे थोड़ा सा. प्रोसेस एक्चुअली मेरा 2 प्रोसेस होता है. 1 प्रोसेस इज कॉइल प्रोसेस एंड सेकंड वन इज द क्ले स्लैब प्रोसेस. ये दोनों.
द फर्स्ट प्रोसेस इज कॉल्ड व्हाट?
कॉइल प्रोसेस.
कॉइल प्रोसेस.
कॉइल ऐसा बना के उसको स्लोली पिंच करके वो करता है. वो बड़ा काम कॉइल प्रोसेस से करना पड़ता है. This slab process is some limitations.
I was reading somewhere that you have worked both with a pot as a pot, but you've also made the pot into a head.
No. That is also that is also the coil process.
So that's how interesting your work is. And I don't know, are there any questions? Anyone who's a budding sculptor wants to experiment with clay and you have a question?
I'm audible? Yeah, I would like to know about your early childhood and post-childhood. How did that influence on your work is there, or doesn't have any influence?
Yeah, actually that is a slowly change. वो तो हमेशा आर्टिस्ट का वो लाइफ का एक पार्ट होता है. लाइफ में हर चीज ऐसे आगे जाके चेंज होता रहता है. उस हिसाब से दिस आर्ट इज आल्सो सेम. changes तो होना चाहिए, I think.
बिल्कुल.
Yeah.
Bilkul. But Reghuji, tell me something. When you first started from Kerala, so when you relocated, it was to Bhopal. Now you're in Bangalore because, it's convenient. You have a studio here.
Yeah.
Do you also have students working with you? Do you have an atelier? I believe a lot of senior artists are known to have people working with them. Do you also have...
Yeah, actually my plan is one of the studio. One of the studio, some people are getting some of the chance in Bhopal. Yes. Yeah, yes. Bhopal studio, I am converting for that.
So you have converted your Bhopal space into a space where others can also exhibit.
Just like residency like that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
But do you feel that over a period of time, ceramics has also now really achieved a lot more than it had in the earlier times? There were only pots. When you thought of ceramics, लोग सोचते थे वो pots, plates, वही ceramics.
Actually, now the ceramic is very important for the opportunities. अभी बहुत सारे opportunities है ceramic के लिए, क्योंकि interior is very important for the construction field. इंटीरियर के लिए सिरामिक ऐसा ही बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट, बहुत रोल होता है.
P. Daroz has just won the Kalidas Samman in Bhopal. He is also very successful.
Second, the architecture college में अभी पूरा ये सिरामिक का सब्जेक्ट शुरू किया है, शुरू हो रहा है. ऐसा बहुत सारा अपॉर्चुनिटीज है इस सिरामिक फील्ड में. दूसरा प्रोफेशन से कंपेयर करोगे तो काफी बेटर.
और जो एक चीज है, आप रेसिडेंसीज के बारे में बात कर रहे थे कि जापान, कोरिया, ये सब जगह में बहुत चर्चा हो रहा है with ceramics. And India, we have a very unique narrative, very unique language, so that when they come here or when the artists from here go there, I think it's a wonderful exchange of ideas.
Actually here India में अभी ceramic शुरू होके काफी टाइम नहीं हुआ है.
Exactly.
We about maximum 150
years.
पर जापान, चाइना वो ऐसा नहीं है, इतने सालों से वो लोग काम कर रहे हैं.
क्योंकि उनका वो जो टेराकोटा वॉरियर्स बनाया है, आप सोचिए वो कब काशियान में.
पर उसका ये क्रिएटिव्स का बारे में मैं नहीं बोल रहा. इंडिया भी बहुत आगे है क्रिएटिव डिजाइन का, या सिरामिक आर्टिस्ट हो या स्कल्पटर हो या पेंटर हो, उसका बारे में वो नहीं बोल रहा है. बहुत आगे है इंडियन आर्टिस्ट भी. पर सिरामिक का ऐसा नहीं है, इतने साल, बहुत अधिक साल हुआ नहीं है इधर हिंदुस्तान.
काफी नया मीडियम है. अभी आपको कभी लगता है that you would like to go back to stone or use another medium other than your
actually I am doing you saw my bronze sculpture. मैं bronze में भी काम करता रहता है.
You also do bronze.
Bronze sculpture per year, I think minimum about 8 to 10 work I am doing in bronze also.
But for that you have to be, you need a lot of strength and you have to be physically very fit.
That is the permanent medium.
Yes.
This is the fragile ceramic.
Yes. But the thing is that terracotta का जो texture है, जो feel है, अभी आप हिम्मत शाह के बारे सोचिए. I have this beautiful terracotta sculpture by Himmat. बहुत सावधानी से रखना होता है कि गिरेगा तो बस खत्म. But they are so beautiful.
I know very well हिम्मत भाई. हिम्मत भाई का साथ हमने काम भी किया है 2-3 वर्कशॉप में वगैरह. ऐसा कोई आर्टिस्ट हिंदुस्तान में है नहीं है.
हिम्मत शाह
वो क्ले बहुत सारा चीजें हैं उसका काम है. क्योंकि क्ले स्लिप बना के मैंने 25-30 साल का क्ले स्लिप उसका पास मिलेगा. वो सुबह उठ के नेचर में रखेंगे, धूप हवा सब मिलता है. मैंने उसका वो मटेरियल्स को भी ऐसे ही मैंने नेचर से इतने वो रिलेशन होता है, उसका वो रिलेशन देता है नेचर को, उसका वर्किंग मटेरियल्स को. वो ऐसा कोई नहीं कर, इवन हम भी नहीं कर सकता है. ऐसा ही है उसका. पर वो बहुत अच्छा काम होता है उसका, बहुत अच्छा काम भी करता है वो. पर उतने अधिक काम किया नहीं अभी. Now he's in 90
plus. Yes. So Reghu, what is it that you now aim for, or what is it that you want to do that you haven't done in the past? क्या लगता है कि ये मुझे करना चाहिए या ये अवार्ड मेरे को मिलना चाहिए?
नहीं,
क्या
ऐसा
लगता है?
ये अवार्ड का भी पीछे मैं कभी नहीं गया है, आगे भी नहीं जाऊंगा. हमको अपना कहीं भी एक कॉर्नर पर माई लाइफ इज आल्सो सेम. हमको ये चीज़ों का पीछे जाता नहीं है. हम मेरा वर्किंग प्रोफेशन को सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट देता है, बस वही है. उसके अलावा मेरा लाइफ में मुझे और कुछ नहीं चाहिए. कुछ ऐसा थिंकिंग भी नहीं है अभी तक.
वो मेरे को मालूम है, because
Yeah.
you I know are a shy speaker in public, and it's a great pleasure and a privilege to have Reghuji with us today, because he's a reluctant participant in anything that happens in the public area. So when I personally called him up to invite him, I was slightly apprehensive that is he ever going to agree. But I have known his work, and I think we've known each other otherwise professionally, and he immediately said yes. So I think you should give him a big hand, because he's here. He's with us.
किसी को अगर विजिट करना, कोई भी विजिट करना चाहता तो मेरा स्टूडियो में आके किसी को डायरेक्ट
सब आएंगे. अब इनवाइट कर दिया है ना, तो
प्लीज कम टू विजिट माय स्टूडियो. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
प्रभाव हुआ?
बहुत हुआ है. भारत भवन ऐसा एक आर्ट सेंटर था, क्योंकि वर्ल्ड पोएट्री इंटरनेशनल बिनाले प्रिंट ये सब भारत भवन ऑर्गेनाइज हुआ था. वर्ल्ड पोएट्री हिंदुस्तान में वहाँ हुआ था भारत भवन में एक टाइम पर. पॉलिटिकली वो ऐसा ही कुछ, वो आर्ट सेंटर ऐसा है. आर्ट सेंटर का लाइफ मैक्सिमम ओनली 10 ईयर. उसके बाद स्लोली वो डाउन होके जाता
Still
है.
the studios are working like you. सिरेमिक जो है वो आपने और आगे कैरी किया बहुत. भारत भवन आके ही आपको सिरेमिक में ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट हुआ या पहले से हुआ था?
नहीं, पहले से नहीं हुआ था. मैं फर्स्ट टाइम सिरेमिक देख रहा था भारत भवन जाने के बाद. सो देन ये सब प्रैक्टिकल होता है. प्रैक्टिकल वर्क, और पेंटिंग हो, स्कल्पचर हो, सिरेमिक हो, ग्राफिक आर्ट्स हो, एनीथिंग इज द experience only.
Okay, thank you so much.
Actually, first I would like to thank you so much for this, because I have heard about you, but your work was so vast and so excellent, we had no idea. So यही मेरा actual question था कि sculptor जैसे ये महान आर्ट को आम आदमी के पास कैसे पहुंचा जा सकता है? वी आर नॉट इवन अवेयर, सो मच वर्क इज गोइंग ऑन इन स्कल्पचर. आर्ट का थोड़ा बहुत प्रमोशन होता है, दिस इज हैपनिंग, एंड विद इन अ क्लोज सर्कल पीपल नो स्कल्पचर के बारे में. जो पीपल हु आर स्टडिंग, जो इसमें स्टडी करता है, रिसर्च करता है, लेकिन आम आदमी जिसे को इंटरेस्ट है आर्ट एंड स्कल्पचर के बारे में, कैसे हमको अवेयरनेस हो सकता है कि आपका क्या काम है? हाउ कैन यू गेट क्रिएट अवेयरनेस? कैसे हो सकता है?
नहीं, अभी बहुत सारा चांसेस है. हर इंसान का अंदर, दिमाग के अंदर हो या शरीर के अंदर हो, या आर्ट का कुछ तो रहता है. आर्ट का कुछ भी चीज नहीं होता तो वो इंसान का लाइफ कंप्लीट. या तो मेरा ऐसा बोलोगे तो वो एकदम वो नॉर्मल नहीं होता है वो एक इंसान. सपोज आप एक कपड़ा का दुकान में जाओगे, कपड़ा का सिलेक्शन, क्लॉथ का सिलेक्शन, योर सिलेक्शन, उसका डिजाइन, दैट इज एन आर्ट. वो एक क्रिएटिविटी है. वो आपका अंदर का वो क्रिएटिविटी वर्क नहीं होता तो आपका सिलेक्शन बराबर नहीं होता है.
एक्चुअली हम आपके बारे में ज्यादा जानना चाहते हैं. कैसे जान सकते हैं, वही मेरा प्रश्न था. आपका वेबसाइट,
how do festival has
you can visit one time. You can visit my studio. My studio is in Kagalipura, Kanakapura Road.
Thank you so much. It was really fantastic experience.
Actually very important. All the subject very important. Basic the art is in drawing. आप स्कल्प्टर होना हो या पेंटिंग होना हो या ग्राफिक आर्ट होना हो या इवन डिजाइनिंग, ये हर चीज के लिए ड्राइंग इज इम्पोर्टेंट.
Yes.
या
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
I had a question. Fascinating to hear about your story, Mr. Raghu, and your art is really very nice. From your speech, I heard you're not motivated by awards. So what is your inspiration? आपकी प्रेरणा क्या है? Were there any social, economic, political or religious events in your course of life which inspired you to create art like this?
नहीं, मेरा पर्सनल और दूसरा किसी को मैं कंपेयर नहीं कर सकता है. ऐसा ही मेरा पर्सनल यही है. मुझे ये पॉलिटिक्स का पीछे जाने का बिल्कुल दिलचस्प तो है नहीं है. स्पेशली आजकल का ये पॉलिटिक्स है ना, वो हम वही सोचता है उसका पीछे जाने से अच्छा है मेरा काम मुझे करते रहना चाहिए. उसमें जाके क्यों दिमाग खराब करना है पॉलिटिक्स में. मैंने ऐसा जो भी चीज़ में जाके क्यों, सिर्फ आपका नहीं है, हर प्रोफेशन में मेरा ओपिनियन यही होता है. जो भी प्रोफेशन हो वो प्रोफेशन आप अच्छा सा कर लीजिए. ऐसा होता तो दैट इज वेरी इम्पोर्टेंट.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Thank you.
हेलो, मैं बच्चों को थिएटर सिखाती हूँ, ड्रामा वगैरह.
बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा.
तो वर्कशॉप करती हूँ, तब जाके मैं ये क्ले मॉडलिंग भी करती हूँ. खुद स्कल्प्टर नहीं हूँ. इज देयर एनी बिगिनर्स इंस्ट्रक्शंस टू गिव टू चिल्ड्रन?
या वेरी गुड. क्योंकि मैंने भी थिएटर में, फॉर एग्जाम्पल बीवी कारंत का साथ उसका एक रेपरटरी मैसूर है, वहाँ उसका साथ वो मैसूर रंगयान करके एक रेपरटरी है उसका, अभी गवर्नमेंट का, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का अंडर है. ये 1 साल मैं अपना काम सब बंद करके उसका रंगयान में जाके उसको जितने सारा काम करके उसको पूरा काम मैंने उसको ऐसा डोनेशन किया था रंगयान. क्योंकि वो थिएटर मुझे बहुत पहले से बहुत अच्छा लगता है, क्योंकि ये सब कला है. कला मैंने ऐसा बोलोगे तो भाई बहन है. पेंटर हो, स्कल्प्टर हो या परफॉर्मिंग आर्टिस्ट हो, सब कला है. वो थिंकिंग या जो भी हो वो सब एक ही बराबर होता है. उसमें आर्थिक डिफरेंट मुझे नहीं लगता है. वो कर सकता है बच्चों को. आप जो भी दूसरी एक बात है ना, बच्चों इतने ऑनेस्टली काम करता है. बच्चों सबसे छोटा बच्चों का 2-3 चीज बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट होता है. उसका ब्रेन ऐसा विकसित होने के लिए पानी, मिट्टी, रेत, ये कोई भी बच्चों को वो बच्चे देखोगे तो ये चीज़ों को छोड़ेगा नहीं. आप बच्चों को इतना भी मारोगे या तो कहीं भी लेके जाओगे, फिर वो वापस आके रेत में खेलेंगे या पानी में खेलेंगे या मिट्टी में खेलेंगे. वही होता है बच्चों का. वो एक्चुअली वो ब्रेन विकसित, या तो उसका क्रिएटिविटी बढ़ाने के लिए सबसे बेस्ट मीडियम है ये चीज़ है. इसलिए बच्चों को आप ऐसा कुछ क्ले मॉडलिंग सिखाओगे या वो जो भी ऐसा कुछ सब्जेक्ट देने का नहीं, उसको खेलने के लिए ये मटेरियल्स आप दे सकता है, वो अच्छा होता है.
I would like to ask, how do you add life to your script? Yeah, I would like to ask, hello? Here.
हाँ.
Yeah, मैं पूछ रहा था कि आप जान कैसे देते हैं आपके स्कल्पचर्स को?
जान?
इधर.
या जान वो कैसे देता है, मैंने वो सब मेरा एक क्या बोलता है, एक अनुभव या फिर एक संतृप्ति उसको बोल सकता है. ठीक है, अच्छा सा मैं एक स्कल्पचर करके मुझे बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. वो स्कल्पचर मेरा मन में मुझे ऐसा लगता होगा तो ठीक है, मुझे वो फीलिंग आता है, ठीक है मेरा ये स्कल्पचर को जान है, वो दिस इज माय ओपिनियन.
Also, Reghu ji, you don't work in series. When you're working, you make individual sculptures. I think that is very brave. ये नहीं कि ये successful है, it has been collected, so I have to make more of the same, which people I don't want to name are doing. वो एक formatting हो जाता है कि ये successful है, and we will make more sculptures in the same way.
ऐसा वो हम और भी आर्टिस्ट लोगों को देखा है. हम अभी एक 10 स्कल्पचर मेरा एक 10 स्कल्पचर मैं करके इधर रखोगे तो 10 काम उतने अच्छा नहीं होता है. वो उसमें कुछ काम वो हम वो ऐसे होता है. मुझे लगता है ज्यादातर आर्टिस्ट वो आर्टिस्टों का विचार ऐसा ही होता है.
Absolutely. I think we have time for one more question, and I know that you want to ask.
Hi. So मेरा सवाल ये है कि आर्टिस्ट के लाइफ में काफ़ी सक्सेसेस के बारे में हम बहुत बातचीत करते हैं और वो बड़ी हो जाती है, लेकिन आपने जो चीज़ें सपोज यू वर्कड ऑन समथिंग एंड इट डिडंट वर्क, फेलियर को आपने कैसे हैंडल किया और उससे आपको क्या प्रेरणा मिला, और व्हाट वाज द प्रोसेस ऑफ लर्निंग व्हेन समथिंग डिडंट गो अकॉर्डिंग टू हाउ यू, आपने जैसे सोचा शायद वैसे बना नहीं. ये मेरा सवाल है आपके लिए.
हाँ, वो एक अच्छा क्वेश्चन है. पर ये हम फॉर एग्जाम्पल मेरा अनुभव, मेरा लाइफ का प्रैक्टिस मैं कैसे करता था, वो बहुत पहले बिगिनिंग में मैं कुछ ड्राइंग करके वो उसके बाद फिर काम करता था, या फिर स्कल्पचर होगा तो छोटा सा मैकेट बोलता है उसको बना के फिर काम करता था. पर उसको आसिटीज वो नहीं हो सकता था. बीच में हमारा है ना, ठीक है ऐसा कुछ चेंज करना चाहता है, वो सपोज जो भी क्लॉथ का पोर्शन कुछ और कुछ चेंज करना चाहिए, या हैंड का या हेड का पोर्शन और भी कुछ चेंज करना चाहिए, वो ऑटोमेटिकली तो होता है. वो ऐसा करना भी चाहिए. आसिटीज उसको फॉलोअप नहीं हो सकता है, करेगा भी नहीं है. ऐसा ही चेंजेस तो होता है ऐसा.
So thank you very, very much, Reghu ji. I think yes, of course you can. I can't see you.
Here.
I can just hear your voice.
Your left side.
Yes.
Sir, I want to ask a question that there are many sculptures who are not paid significantly as they come from backward places. Like I also come from West Bengal, and there are many places like Purulia and all we know.
I hope you're not calling Bengal backward in any way.
No, I'm saying there are many places in
just
Bengal.
To check.
No, I am not.
We've just had the Bengal Biennale there.
No. I'm just saying that there are many backward places in West Bengal where there are many other small sculptures as well. They are not paid significantly, but they do a lot of hard work. So how do they get recognition? Because I feel that even when people who are doing fine arts or like us or in media background, they also struggle a lot even coming in a city, while they are coming from backward more places than us. So what do you have to have a say on that?
नहीं, ऐसा ये आप देख लीजिए, ये फाइनेंस में जाके डिग्री या डिप्लोमा मिलता है वो उतने इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है. क्योंकि इतने सपोज हुसैन साहब है ना, हुसैन यमब हुसैन ऐसा फाइनेंस में जाके कुछ वो नहीं किया था डिग्री या डिप्लोमा. वो उसका मैंने ऐसे ही वो किया है. ऐसा बहुत सारा एग्जाम्पल, बहुत सारा वो नाम से सीनियर आर्टिस्ट है. ऐसा कोई भी डिग्री डिप्लोमा करके आके काम नहीं किया है. आपको अगर कला फील्ड में काम करना होगा तो आप अपना आप कर सकता है. पर एस्टेब्लिशमेंट का बारे में आप बोल रहे हैं, उसका ऐसा नहीं है. आप काम करते रहिए. कहीं आपको गैलरी नहीं मिल रहा होगा तो आप फॉर एग्जाम्पल जहांगीर आर्ट गैलरी करके गैलरी है मुंबई, वो मेरा काफ़ी शो उधर हो चुका है. वहाँ एक फुटपाथ होता है. फुटपाथ में ये जहांगीर आर्ट गैलरी सभी लोगों को दे नहीं सकता है, देता भी नहीं है, क्योंकि लिमिटेशंस होता है. अभी लाखों आर्टिस्ट है, लाखों आर्टिस्ट को कैसे जहांगीर आर्ट गैलरी मिलेंगे? ऐसा 7-8 स्पेस है, 7-8 रूम है, इसलिए सबको दे नहीं सकता है. वो फुटपाथ में लोग है ना, वो हैंग करता है पेंटिंग को या स्कल्पचर को. स्कल्पचर होता है तो फुटपाथ में लगाता है. स्लोली ऐसा कर सकता है आप. फिर उसके बाद है ना, लोग एक्चुअली ये सब लोग अप्रिशिएट करता है, करने का है. लोग अप्रिशिएट करने के बाद ही आपका नाम धीरे धीरे ऊपर आता है. क्योंकि लोग कैसे अप्रिशिएट करना है, आपका काम अच्छा होने से. काम अच्छा होना होगा तो आप रेगुलर काम करते रहना है. वही है.
Thank you very much, Reghu ji. Thank you so very much.
Once again, can I have the mic? Yeah. Once again, another big round of applause to both G. Reghu and, of course, Ina Puri. I request Rachna Singh Davidar, Festival Director, The Hindu Lit for Life, to present our speakers with mementos. Once again, to remind you that our authors will be around for book signing, so not to worry. You will get to meet with them, have a quick conversation, get your book signed as well. All right, it's very, very exciting for each one of us right now because our final session today celebrates a life dedicated to the world of cinema. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and let's give him a big roaring round of applause, to legendary actor and filmmaker Amol Palekar and author and film historian Balaji Vittal as they take us through a journey into the world of movies and stories. All right, he's still on the way, so we'll just give it a couple of minutes while he makes his way through. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming here. Thank you Amol sir, coming all the way from Pune. Okay, कुछ मीठा शीठा हो जाए to start with. You need an icebreaker, right, to start, or rather a sweet breaker. Okay. I'll start with a statement. Let's see how many of you can add on to what I'm saying. सिर्फ आलू का पराठा क्यों बेटा? उसके बाद क्या है? मैं तुम्हें कलकत्ते का राजभोग खिलाऊंगा. उसके बाद क्या है? दिल्ली का सोना हलवा, फिर डाउन साउथ मद्रास का पेड़ा, बनारस का कलाकंद खिलाऊंगा. So I think all of you would have guessed as to which dialogue this movie, which movie this dialogue is from, right? Or do I need to say it once again? Golmaal, one of the biggest comedies ever. It was one of the most popular comedies ever, but as Amol Palekar sir says in his book Viewfinder, and I quote, I am much more than just the hero of Golmaal. Reducing me to that single image overlooks the layers of my true identity. Despite the mismatch between who I truly am and how others see me, I have continued to evolve with my audiences, arriving at this momentous day. Yes, the day on which we get to see the world of Amol Palekar through his Viewfinder, the wonderful memoir. Can we have a big round of applause? Sir, I have read the book twice already. And one of my observations is that the script reads like a sequence of images that collectively create a feeling of watching an animation film. And here's an example, and I quote from your book. From my family home in Shivaji Park, 2 different roads led to the Dadar train station. The 2 routes took one past either the Samarth Art Studio or Pam Art Studio. I had a habit of stopping by the studios where giant-sized film posters were hand-painted, unquote. This creates a complete image of a road towards the other station and 2 roads, one here, one there. Now, given this early interest in art, it was no surprise that you would enroll yourself in a leading art institute. Am I right?
In a way, yes. But as those times I can recollect, this was hardly an option which anyone thought of. During those times, I am talking exactly about 1960 to be precise. When I finished my matric, thank you. Hot water. Yeah.
Let's take a 10-second break.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I did pretty well. I acquired a first class in matric. So the options to a good student were, the first choice at that time used to be science, the second choice used to be arts, and the third choice used to be commerce. And beyond that, there was nothing. So when I chose to go to Sir J.J. School of Art, everybody, including my teachers, were quite taken aback. I was very, very clear in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. And my parents, incidentally, didn't object to that. I mean, it is very important that we came from a middle-class family, lower middle-class family, one can say. And I was the only son with 3 sisters. So for my parents to say yes to me and go to J.J. School of Art, that too choosing fine arts and not commercial art or applied art as it was termed later on. At that time it was commercial art. I chose not to go there but enroll for fine arts. Before this, my stopping at these studios, which I still remember very fondly, because what kind of enamored me was not only the complete out of proportion, larger than life portraits of our heroes of that time and how they were made, but the smell of linseed oil and turpentine, which used to be surrounding that space, I still remember very fondly. And now, when I go to my studio and stand in front of the canvas, that is what pulls me there to the studio. It is that smell of linseed oil and turpentine, which forces me to go there.
Excellent. Apart from technical and artistic skills, what life skills did you learn while at JJ?
Oh, quite a few, I must say. In fact, it was right in the beginning of when the college started. It used to be in month of June, so a monsoon time. And I remember right in the first week, our dean, who was a very, very accomplished landscape painter, Professor Dhond. He was a tiny little figure, but a tremendous artist, particularly with watercolor. And so he collected 8-10 of us and said, "Chalo, let's go. I'll show you something." So we all went with him, and just across JJ School of Art, we walked down to Victoria Terminus Station, which is now called Chhatrapati Shivaji train station, which is the last station for the trains in Mumbai. It's a huge junction and beautiful architecture, lovely construction, magnificent is the only word. So he brought us there. It had just stopped raining. He opened his folding easel and a folding chair. He parked himself in the chair and put a paper and everything and started painting. And in about just 40 to 45 minutes, he painted that Victoria Terminus station. What I still remember, and I get goosebumps remembering that, is not only that we could see the Victoria Terminus station, but we could see the wet roads since it had just rained, and we could feel the dampness in the air in that small frame of painting. We were totally zapped. It was many years later, I learned something from that painting, which was, I will quickly mention, first time when I went to Moscow, what struck me was there were no hoardings. Throughout Moscow, there were no hoardings. So the beautiful buildings, architecture, all those beautiful sites were not at all marred by the hoardings and all kinds of cluster that we are so used to it that we have become immune to that now. It was there that I remembered this landscape which was done by Professor Dhond, and I realized that he had also not, though there were many hoardings and electrical wires hanging from here and there, etc., he had not captured any of them in his painting. And that's when I learned that an artist chooses what he wants to show. He has to choose. It is not like taking a photograph and going by realistic standards and showing what it is exactly. It is the artist's choice of how he sees that frame and how he wants the viewers, the audience, to see that frame. That realization was right in the beginning of JJ School of Art Studies.
Excellent, excellent story. You'll find stories like this in Viewfinder. So visual arts is the first love of Amol Palekar. And what I must tell you is where Viewfinder is different is it doesn't follow a regular chronological flow like what we see in biographies or autobiographies. Random thoughts and event jump out of the page as we turn them, rise up and caress our senses just like thoughts do. And like thoughts, events cannot be foretold as well. So here comes your second love for theatre, which happened quite fortuitously, right? Can you tell us a little bit about Chup Kot Chalu Ahe and Vallabhpurchi Dant Katha?
As I have mentioned in the book, that was one of the accidents which, lovable accidents in my life. But this was, my entering into theatre was purely an accident. And that's why I still say that I am an actor by accident. I was I was escorting a young girl who was acting in a play. And that's where I met the theatre legend Satyadev Dubey. She was acting in his play. So I used to go there to drop her and pick her up. After a few such meetings, once Dubey came out of the rehearsal, after the rehearsal was over, and he asked me, would you like to act in my next play? And before I could answer, he said, please don't think that I have seen some great potential in you, or I have seen some hidden actor in you. Aisa kuch nahi hai. I have been noticing that you have lot of time and you are whiling away. So, why don't you use that time for some better purpose? That's how I became an actor. So it was that absolute clarity, not only from him, but even in my head, that there was no great actor in me. In fact, there is one more incident which I must share with you. After the first play, Chup Kot Chalu Hai, Silence, the Court is in Session by great Vijay Tendulkar. After that play was performed and all that, there was a review in the Times of India, and which there was a mention of my name, saying that this young actor gave a very suave performance. I asked Dubey, what is the meaning of that word? I didn't know what is suave, whether it was a compliment or what. So he smiled and he said, that just means that now you are ready to learn ABC of theatre.
Now we come to films. Can you be an insider and yet not have to go with the flow all the time? Do you have the guts to file a lawsuit against one of the biggest film producers and still have the faith in the system that you can win the case against him? So the shy young man on screen you see in the bus stop in Choti Si Baat was really a man of steel. These aspects of the person, that is Amol Palekar, comes out very clearly in Viewfinder. So now tell us something about your two biggest launch vehicles when you got into movies, Basuda and Rishida. Just your perspective, your comparative perspective among both the greats.
I must say that, in fact, not only Basuda and Rishida, but all the great people who helped me understand things, understand theater, understand films, understand the craft, the grammar, everything. They gave me not only their love, but their knowledge without any reservation. And that list is quite long. Surprisingly, all of them happen to be Bengali. And Basu Chatterjee, Rishikesh Mukherjee, Tapan Sinha, Biplab Rai Chowdhury, these are the big names from films, but two absolute giants of the theatre world. One was the great Shambhu Mitra, and the other was equally great Badal Sarkar. Now, all these people, they are responsible for whatever I am today. No need to add, but all the good qualities are given by them. Whatever the mistakes and the not so good qualities are my own, original. Coming back to Basudha and Rishida. Basudha, in fact, both of them I knew before I worked with them. Rishida used to be a regular audience to my theatre performances. And Basudha was part of the Film Society movement in Bombay at that time, called Film Forum. They used to show, Film Forum used to show films, foreign films, not just Hollywood. In fact, no Hollywood film was screened. It was all European films, Japanese films, all from all other countries. And that's where we got to know what cinema can do, what all things are possible, not just being bogged down by a limited scope given by Hollywood and then copied by Bollywood. It was at Film Forum that I really grew up. And Basu Chatterjee, Basu Bhattacharya, M.S. Satyu, all these people, they had started that Film Forum movement. So I used to meet all of them at the screening, then the discussions which used to take place after the screening, etc., etc. So both these people, I knew them personally before I worked with them. Basudha was a young, new filmmaker when we worked together. He had Rajnigandha was his just third film. His first film was Sara Akash, award-winning film. Then second film he made was Piya Kagar, and then the third one was Rajnigandha. So he was comparatively a newcomer, whereas Rishida was already a doyen. He had already made his mark in complete mainstream cinema when he asked me whether I would like to act in his film. That was Golmaal. Both of them were, in a way, diametrically opposite characters. Like Rishida was not only very talkative, he used to come up with all kinds of stories, and it was Rishida who narrated the entire story of Golmaal to me, and such a fascinating narration I heard for the first time that I could see the entire film unfold there in his drawing room.
Excellent.
Whereas Basudha was, I must tell you a little story about Basudha. Basudha was an extremely poor narrator. So poor that for Rajnigandha, I'll tell you the story. We met and he said, Amol, I am making a film. एक लड़का है मानो तुम हो और एक लड़की है एक विद्या सिन्हा करके नई लड़की है और फिर and then he stopped and he says यार तुम ये पढ़ लो. That's all the narration. एक लड़का है एक लड़की है, that's all. He was so bad, but he was so good in the cinematic language, which was all written down in a complete script. He used to give me the complete script. So in that sense, he spoilt me a lot. When I started demanding a complete script with the directors and producers, they used to be quite shocked because those were the times when the films were not made at a stretch. Films were made in bits and pieces over a period of, say, 1.5 years, 2 years, sometimes even more. And whatever, of course, the story narration was given to us, or few filmmakers used to give the complete script. But otherwise, it was a schedule of, say, 5 days, 7 days, something like that. And then only those scenes used to be given to us. That's how the films were made. Both these directors, they were in command with their craft. Rishida was even far more eloquent with his craft or grammar because his knowledge of music was tremendous. He was himself was a very good sitar player. So if you see all his films, in fact, I don't know how many of you have seen his film called Anuradha. Yes. Anuradha has a music by Pandit Ravi Shankar. And what fascinating music. Absolutely fascinating. You see any of the films of Hrishikesh Mukherjee and you will find excellent music in it. These were, this is how I would...
Yeah. 1980, which saw you getting into full-fledged mainstream. NC Sippi, Gulzar, Kishore Kumar, R.D. Burman, absolutely all the trappings of mainstream with Gulzar. The same year saw you also getting behind the camera with Akrit, one of your best creations as a director. So how did the transition come about? Must have been a big milestone in your life, right? Getting behind the camera. Akrit.
I had already become a director in theatre. I had, in fact, the transition from the actor to the director happened in theatre much, much earlier. Like what you mentioned in the beginning about Vallabhpur Chidantakatha. I was only 3 plays old, so to say. Gochi was later. That became a landmark. But Vallabhpur Chidantakatha, again, very interesting how the transition happened. Once Dubey asked me to go and see a play by Badal Sarkar. That was Evam Indrajit. One of the absolute classics of Indian theatre, I would say, beyond doubt. After I came back watching Evam Indrajit, and I was talking about so many things, and about Badal Sarkar and all. So Dubey said, here is a play by Badal Sarkar. Since you know Bengali, I had learned Bengali. So since you know Bengali, I am giving you the Hindi translation. I have already asked for the original Bengali script, but you can start translating that. So that's how I translated, which was the original play, Bollapurer Rupokatha. And I translated into Vallapurchi Dantakatha. Now, Dantakatha has a slight pun which is intended by me because the hero of the play is a dentist.
Okay.
So I thought instead of Rupakatha, if I say Dantakatha, then Dantakatha is also used in Marathi as something very lightly told story, but it also reflects his being a dentist. So, and in fact, I remember when my translation was complete and I sat down to read out the translation to the bigwigs of Theatre Unit. Theatre Unit was a major theatre company which was run by Satyadev Dubey. I must mention, for people to know the significance of Theatre Unit, it was started by Ibrahim Alkazi. And when Alkazi was invited to head the National School of Drama and went to Delhi, then Dubey took over Theatre Unit, and that's how Theatre Unit had a very significant place in the history of Indian theatre. So I sat down to read the play translation that I had done, and I said, before I started reading the actual translation, I said, this is one change that I have made in the title from Roop Katha to Danta Katha. Dubey stopped me there and he said, when do you want to start the rehearsals? I didn't know what he meant. He said, you are not only playing the lead, but you are also going to direct the play. I was totally taken aback. I mean, as I said, I was just 3-year-old. I mean, no experience of theatre, that great experience. I said, I don't know ABC about direction. He said, so what? What worst can happen? You'll fall flat on your face. It's okay for me. Go ahead and direct the play. That's how the transition from an actor to director also happened. But in the films, that transition was a very, very conscious decision because the kind of films I wanted to make, I thought of making, I realized that they are not part of the mainstream, and therefore it would be difficult to find backers. I will have to become a producer myself, and so that I owe no explanation. I will put my own money, I will make a film that I want to make and be happy with that. That's how Akrit happened.
Excellent. You have explicitly stated that my career in cinema reflects my passion for autonomy. Exactly what you said, being a producer yourself. But negative roles like those in Bhumika, Gharaunda, or a little bit later in Khamosh, it went diametrically opposite to the roles that had given you stardom. Now, wasn't that a big risk you were taking?
Of course, tremendous risk. Again, I was one of the fortunate ones who started my career as an actor in Hindi films with 3 Silver Jubilee hits. The first was Rajnigandha, second was Choti Si Baat, and the third was Chit Chor. And all were stupendous success. So I was already a sought-after star. And for me to choose to play the villain in Bhumika sent shockwaves in the industry. And all the people, they said, have you gone bonkers? Why are you crazy? Why do you want to do this? You're a successful hero. Why do you want to play a villain? I said, the actor in me feels challenged and therefore excited to play this grey character much more than the, say, goody-goody, who does nothing wrong kind of a hero. Though all the three roles I had played, the boy next door was the stamp given to me. In those boy next door also, I tried to find completely different shades in all the three, but that's apart. I was looking for challenging and exciting characters to play, and as you very rightly pointed out, in fact, it is my inclination and my clarity. You can see the first film which I produced myself and directed was Akrit, in which, again, I played a villain. In fact, the Akrit, the entire film, is going so much against what we think should be the kind of accepted norms towards success. There is no hero. The villain is the protagonist. Now, how can the audience feel anything for a villain? I took that risk because that role again fascinated me so much. And even the second film which I produced and directed, called Ankahi, the kind of character I play in that, if I tell you the character, here is a boy who's in love with a girl and they want to get married. The boy's father is a astrologer, a very renowned astrologer, and he says that don't get married because I see your wife is going to die within the first 9 months of your marriage. So what do I do as a boy who's madly in love with a girl? I choose to marry another girl who I know. And I say that she will die and then I will marry you. Now it is, I think,
shocking.
Obnoxious is the word I can think of. But I played that. So it were these grey shades. Again, I can quickly, it was in the JJ School of Art, there was another incident which I have written in depth in the book, so I will not go into detail. But another professor of mine, a very renowned painter, internationally known, Professor Palekar, he taught me a lesson in which, I won't go into the details how we came to that, but he said that contrast between black and white is very easy to capture, extremely easy. What is difficult is to capture the different shades of grey in between, from white to black. There are so many umpteen number of shades that you can find in grey, and if you can find those shades capably, that's where the strength of you as an artist will be proven.
Excellent. Talking of sketches, I must tell you something. In this book, it's not just a memoir. You'll find lovely sketches like this, like what I'm holding up. Deliberately done hazy, which I think sort of ties back to your question of who am I, something that you have asked yourself. And then there are some QR codes which sort of connect you to audio visuals and movies and posters and pictures and all that. So it's not just a book, it's much more than that. Before we turn it over to the audience for some questions, I'm sure there'll be some lot of audience questions. Can you describe briefly what's your personal journey of writing this book?
These sketches which he showed you and mentioned are not done by me, though I am a painter. They are done by your namesake. He is also a Balaji. He is Narsimha Balaji, a very accomplished artist. Sandhya had seen his work and Sandhya approached him if he would do, because he also works in watercolor and these are all done in watercolor. And his style is really fascinating, and that's how we roped him in. An interesting side story with that, I'll quickly say before we go further, is when Sandhya sent him the few photos she had taken of mine as what she wants to be, those sketches to be and how they should be. He agreed and he started working, not knowing that it was me. So much so that once his mother came into his workspace and looked at a photograph and he said, "Oh my God, this is Amol Palekar. And what are you doing with Amol Palekar?" He said, "I don't know who Amol Palekar is." So she literally scolded him that, "How stupid are you?" And he shared that incident with us and he said, "I am so sorry, sir. I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know. My mother is a huge fan of yours, and she, while telling him who Amol Palekar is, she came out with all the Yeshoda songs and all those things." Yes. So that's how those sketches and everything came. While I'm talking about this, I must mention that this entire book, though they are my memoir, during COVID time, I got the necessary time, space, and the solitude that is required to do all this. It was very easily available. So I sat down and penned down, literally penned down. I belong to the dinosaur era, so I still write on paper and pen. So I wrote about 450 pages, and then I gave them to my better half. Better half is again a very short introduction to Sandhya. Sandhya is a many-splendored thing, but it will suffice to say that being my wife is the least of her qualification. She has curated this, translated in English, designed the whole book. Everything that is you see in this book, it has Sandhya's stamp on it. And
excellent, sir. Audience, Amol Palekar. Okay, would request you all to come straight to the question. Keep it short and sweet so we can give chance to many others.
Yes.
Is there another mic we can use?
Hi, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. In an interview with The Hindu, you had said that you feel like an outsider at both the theatre as well as in cinema. Could you please elaborate on that?
Well, an outsider because, you see, in both these fields, what is normally one tries to achieve is be at the top of the mainstream. Whether in theatre or in films, you have to be a top star. Today, I mean, just to give you an example, in films, today all you talk about is whether the film has gone into 100 crore club or now Pushpa 2 has... I don't relate to that. I mean, how much money the film makes or how much money the theatre production makes is not that it's not important, but that is not the end of everything. But we don't seem to talk about anything else. We only talk about the commercial success of an endeavor. I never ever believed in that. I don't think a work of art or a human being can be assessed only by this yardstick. There are so many other things, so many other yardsticks, which are equally important or more important to a person like me, where I think what experimentation I tried in this particular play or what experimentation I tried in this particular film, and whether I could achieve or whether I failed, how I failed, what I achieved, etc., are the yardsticks which are very important for my growth, I think. Again, to your question, specific question, in theatre, I didn't come from National School of Drama. So in that sense, I am not a trained actor. All the top names that you see today, even in Kannada, you will see that they are all trained actors from National School of Drama. I mean, the name which came to my mind first from Karnataka was B.V. Karanth. B.V. Karanth came from National School of Drama and created history. I didn't belong to NSD, so therefore I was an outsider. In films, I didn't come from Film Institute, so again not a trained actor or a director. So those clubs in not in a bad sense I'm mentioning, but those clubs of FTII or NSD and all, I was always an outsider. Well, I didn't mind being that because that probably gave me a complete freedom to do what I believed in and what I wanted to do. There was no baggage.
Okay, great. Next question, please.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi, sir. Really great to see you here. First time I'm seeing you in person. Question is about, you have traveled a long way from the boy next door kind of roles and even acted, transitioned to a director and even acted in web series with Shahid Kapoor. You have seen a lot of things happening, but the boy next door kind of movies, when it happened then, it's not there now because everyone expects grander kind of movies or plays or theaters in those kind of things. So do you think that kind of movies requires specific kind of mindset, maybe in the minds of directors or even producers, because it's a risk? Do you think those kind of movies can be made even now? If so, what kind of mindset needs to happen or change?
I think we have changed as a society. For better or worse, I don't know, but we have definitely changed. So, a simple story told simply, I am not sure whether the youngsters would be interested in that kind of simplicity. I genuinely don't know. There is also a tremendous exposure to the young audience today. I mentioned about the Film Society movement and the film festivals that we used to run to be able to see foreign films and what is happening around the world, etc., etc. Today it is available to you on your mobile. And therefore, the younger generation, and with the OTT platforms having come in, there is no limit for what you can watch, you can see, and you can decide what kind of cinema you want to see, what kind of cinema you like, etc., etc. All that. So, I'm really not sure whether we should feel happy by being nostalgic and say that, oh, those were the great times and those kind of cinema, whether it should be. Why should it be made today? Today, some new kind of cinema should be made, as it is being made by younger generation, and there have been some excellent young directors who have been doing beautiful work, and they are trying to not only express themselves in today's language, but also trying to communicate with the young generation, which is seeking for a new idiom. I can always, of course, say that being part of that era, and which was completely a Renaissance period, I was really fortunate to be part of that Renaissance period, whether in theater, whether in films, whether in visual arts, whether in music. It was a Renaissance period, and all of us were trying to find not only our feet, but we were also trying to find the Indianness in our work, and how I can go to my roots and yet do something different and new.
Yeah. We can take one more question here, but then Amol sir is available for signing autographs outside, and there you can carry on some of the conversations. Okay, two more, but can we make it really, really short? And I don't know who put the hand up first.
Sure. Hello. So you just mentioned about...
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just come to the point. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned about Badal Sarkar and Shubhu Mitro, but you have also closely worked with Utpal Datto and Ashok Kumar per se. So what is your perception about them from a thespian point of view?
It will be very difficult to say in just few lines, but about Utpalda, I must say that I'm happy that you mentioned Utpalda. That's where he started, by Utpalda's performance and dialogue in Golmaal. Again, you see, I feel a little sad that today's generation, through films, what they know of Utpal Dutt is a very limited, one-sided portrayal of a great actor and also an activist. Most of you will not know that Utpal Dutt there was a case of sedition against Utpal Dutt. I mean, today we talk of this sedition and Deshdroha and all that very often. But in those days, and he was not only arrested, he was put in jail for the plays that he did. kind of plays which he repeatedly went on performing, that was Utpal Dutt, a firebrand theatre activist who believed in protesting against the system. So my association and my fondness for Utpal Dutt was something very, very special. It will suffice to say that, which I have again mentioned in the book, that Rishida had made a statement and which became a headline. He said that Amol and Utpal is the best romantic pair that I have with me.
So my last question.
Final question, yeah, right.
To the point, how do you make others feel? I've seen Naram Garam while I was in airport. Before that, I didn't know you. How do you make others feel in an acting as an audience? How do you make them feel what you want to feel?
Sorry.
My question is, how do you make the audience feel what you want them to feel?
I'm very clear that I have no control over the audience who comes to watch either my play or my film. I don't know what they are expecting, nor do I have any control over their expectations. But I do have a control over what they take back. After watching my work, what they take back is completely in my control, and that's what I want to do. One of the finest compliments, I would say, was given to me in such a question-answer session after one of my films. There was a lady who said that your films, I would go miles to watch because those are the films which, and she was talking about my directorial films, not the films as an actor, my directorial film. So she said, these are the films which, after the film is over, I can't leave in the auditorium with the empty popcorn box. I leave the popcorn box there, but I take your film home and it stays with me, sometimes even for a week or more. We go on discussing, debating, and that experience stays with me for such a long time. How can I miss such an experience? I think this was one of the finest compliments given.
One last question, please.
So we'll have to continue outside. We will continue.
This.
Okay?
Sir,
please.
आपकी किताब में everybody knows you as a mild and very civilized person. Lab certificate का जिक्र आप करना चाहेंगे सबके सामने?
Sorry.
Sir,
lab certificate.
एक काम करेंगे. We'll carry the conversation. We'll carry on. अच्छा, okay.
और दूसरा क्या साहब अमीश पुरी साहब का लास्ट पूना का जो प्ले था उनका, अमरीश पुरी साहब का, उसका जिक्र करें तो सबको पता लगेगा उनकी शख्सियत के बारे में. अमरीश पुरी साहब का पूना में जो लास्ट था.
No, I will have to, I have written about it in detail, and unless you read in detail, again it's like, see, Amrish Puri, what the younger generation knows is Mogambo Khush Hua or Bhag Simran Bhag. Yes, that is Amrish Puri, but Amrish Puri, what a tremendous actor he was in theatre as well as in films. You should know, theatre performances you can't see now, but the films which he did a Kannada film called Kadu. You go and try and see that film. Then you will know what an actor Amrish Puri is. Or through the QR code in the book, you can, what you asked for, you can actually see that last performance of Amrish Puri, which is there. You can watch it through QR code.
Thank you very much for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, Amol Palekar. Please, let's give him a bigger round of applause. And Balaji, Vittal, what an awesome session this was. Taking us back in time, definitely. And what an end to the beautiful, the Hindu Lit for Life dialogue. I now request Vidhu Shankar, Assistant Vice President Advertisement, the Hindu Group, to present our speakers with mementos. Of course, Amol will be there at the crossword section, so you can get your book signed, have those quick chats with him. If you have more questions, you can pose it to him and indulge in wonderful conversation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this evening of thought-provoking conversations, I would like to take a moment to thank our distinguished speakers for sharing their insights and enriching perspectives. A big thank you to our partners, Christ University Bangalore, and our bookstore partner, Crossword, without whom this event would have not been possible. And of course, to each and every one of you, our esteemed audience, for being an integral part of the Hindu Lit for Life dialogue. Our authors will be, once again, as I mentioned, available for book signing. The books are available with our bookstore partner, Crossword. And we also invite you to join us for high tea and continue conversations informally. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.